Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Thursday at about 10 o'clock. Hope everyone's doing good. Just kind of recovered from the big storm that passed through here in mid coast Maine. It was fast and furious, but it came quick and left quick. Some pretty big power outages. Luckily, I did not lose power, which was sweet. Um, and there were some pretty crazy floods, but it is what it is. So I am very excited about today's show. This was a movie that I wanted to talk about a while ago, and it's one of those things. I've talked about how I watch movies all the time. I am, hence the name, Film Fanatic. Talk about movies all the time, and it's my favorite thing to do to kind of unwind or disconnect from the day, especially if it's been a busy day. It's uh, it's always great. I always find when the day's over or it's like nighttime, the best thing for me to do to usually just kind of unwind. A lot of the times for myself, and it's a common thing. People with their daily lives or what they're doing with their job or their activities. Sometimes it's hard if you've had certain days where you are, doing a lot, or you have a lot of things that you're thinking about. Sometimes it's very hard to kind of unwind at the end of the day or night, and to kind of detach yourself from the day's happenings for good or bad, and to kind of relax and to get ready to hopefully get some rest. Sometimes that's a thing, and I've always had a problem with that as far as like kind of unwinding from a day. And I always feel, though, and it's always been the case, at the end of that day, um, I if I throw in a movie or two, I usually it totally relaxes me, kind of it soothes me down. It and it's a again, the main thing is, it's to me it's the best form of pure escapism. And I feel like it like encapsulates everything. It's the mental state, even your physical state, which, the more your mental state is at ease, or relaxed or heightened, obviously that affects your body. So I always find that, like, for all of the senses, basically, it it totally helps me kind of disconnect from what has happened during the day, for good or bad, and to try to like ease into the nighttime and to try to relax. The other thing is, I've always been this way, but I'm definitely a night person. I'm a person that tends to stay up on the later side. I've never been like an early morning person, so that's always a big factor. But anyway, today's show is on a movie, like, again, like I said, that I've been wanting to get to, and this movie was wild. I had never seen this before. Um, I bought this at Bull Moose probably a month ago, 2 months ago. I would always go. I don't really go up there anymore because I don't know. I feel like their selection just isn't quite as good. They have an amazing selection, but usually when I go to Bull Moose, I for movies at least, I always go to seek out my favorite genre, and that is the horror exploitation world. Every day or every few weeks, I keep hearing about distributors or stores, closing. The big one was Best Buy. That was not a surprise as far as their of them doing away with their physical media as far as in store. The big thing that was kind of a shock was that their online sales have they have eliminated that part too. And then I saw too that now Target is which is another store, big franchise. They are, I guess, doing away with physical media. I didn't really. There aren't any Targets here locally. I think there's one in Augusta, which is about an hour away. Target is a very cool store, but I never go there. And I never really even knew they had movies, but apparently, I guess they have, or they did, and they announced that they're doing away with physical media too. So, and recently, somebody I know went to Best Buy in Bangor, and he took some photos, and it was really eerie to see these uh, shelves that once were the home for many DVDs and Blu-rays, 4Ks were completely open, completely vacant and empty. So, and then just the other day, or actually this morning, I saw a little clip of, or a little news article about Scream Factory. Scream Factory is a big movie distributor. Their business is they sell DVDs and Blu-rays and 4Ks. They tend to, and most of, well, pretty much all of the movies that they show are horror-based movies, and they do distribute lots of kind of low-budget exploitation horror movies. They also, I believe, they also show or sell more big budget Hollywood based horror films too. But they do have a big selection of more underground kinds of movies. So it's a thing of where I have felt that the last few years we are in a renaissance as far as if you're a collector and into films. It's I think it's the most amazing period to be alive as far as that goes, just that alone. But I also feel like it's one of those things where it's too good to be true. Like there's so much content, or there has been so much content available, and being able to find some of the most obscure and strange movies that were ever made, and being able to buy them on Blu-ray or 4K in these astoundingly beautiful packages. I'm like, this is crazy. This is amazing. Um, I remember talking to a friend about that, and he was like, "Yeah, these are movies that we grew up on, that were on cable or VHS, and they were these super low down and dirty, exploitation movies, horror movies, and they kind of just went into obscurity. And now, and you can only get them on crappy VHS copies, or just not very good, and they would go out of print, and then they would just you know be basically become obsolete. And now it's like you can find the most obscure fucking movie that you can imagine on Blu-ray or 4K. And I've always thought it's too good to be true. But I know, and I kind of got a sense that as great, and especially the last um, like Synapse is the first company that really started getting into selling these kinds of movies on, and they've been around for about 15 years or so. I got on board with being a real big collector as far as the exploitation world the last 3 years, and so, or more. And so when I go to Blue Moose, that's what I seek out, because I feel like even though it's an amazing period and it's my favorite genre of all time, it's going away. It's not. How can that last forever? The audience is always going to be small. They're rabid and they're serious and they're hardcore, and they have a lot of passion, like I do, for these movies. But compared to people who go see movies like, say, Maverick from Tom Cruise, Top Gun Maverick, it's incredibly small, and I do love that movie too. But it's a very different audience, a very different niche, or a different clique of people. So it's interesting. And I recently saw a thing where on Facebook where a guy was talking about, you know, what are your favorite kind of new grindhouse movies, or like, are there any new kind of modern day, horror movies that are made in that same way that all of these great exploitation movies were made? And basically, most people had the same response, and I and I had responded too, saying, "Well, it's the exploitation world itself is dead. I don't feel like it actually exists. There's an incredible, an extremely enthusiastic fan base, but it's in a cult. It's at a cult level. It's small, but they're hardcore. And there's a lot of people into these movies, but it's in comparison to other markets, it's pretty small. And and I said I feel like the grindhouse, the exploitation, were all that stuff that came out in the '60s, '70s, and '80s. As far as new movies go that are coming out, and just the scene itself, I feel like it's dead. It's been dead for a while. There are movies that come out that obviously have a big influence on, from that have that's been that's taken a big influence from that style. I think movies like Nicolas Cage's Mandy. I think that's one movie that was definitely very influenced by the low budget horror exploitation world. And I think movies like, which I'm not really a big fan of, but the Terrifier movies, very much influenced by those old school slasher exploitation movies. But but they're different. They're not coming from that world at all, and they have elements of influence, obviously. But so I, you know, been scooping them up as much as I can. So Love Butcher is a movie I had never seen before. I got this on a whim. I love the cover. I got this on Blu-ray. There are no special features on here, unfortunately, which is a little bit disconcerting. There is an audio commentary on here, which I really want to see, really want to listen to, and you can, obviously when you listen to a commentary on a movie, the movie is the movie is played again, and then the commentary track is over, so you can actually watch it, and it is informative, scene by scene. I don't know what it is though, but a lot of the times I don't listen to audio commentaries, commentary tracks. I rather just watch the movie and not have somebody talking. It's kind of weird. Um, but I'm a sucker for like documentaries about the movies, or interviews, any of that shit. That's what I usually watch, and what it for me is, when I buy these movies, that's a big determining factor. But there's a lot of these movies too that are out that are just given this incredible treatment and don't necessarily have a whole ton of special features. Most of them do, though. I'd say about 90% of them do, and that, to me, is the ultimate selling point for me. But they always at least come with a commentary track. But the main thing is that some of these films, the transfers are just amazing on Blu-ray. And I had never heard of The Love Butcher. It came out in 1975. There were two directors, Michael Angel and Don Jones, and this movie is hilarious. It's from 1975. It's a pure like horror exploitation movie. It's kind of crazy, and it has this movie has such a great opening sequence, and it has such a great ending. It's really great, and it's a slasher movie. It's about a serial killer who has these different personalities, and who gets, basically picked on and made fun of, and is not taken seriously by anyone in his town. So he decides to basically kill everyone. Not the most original story, but I really like this movie a lot. I think this movie is, hilarious, funny, and super weird and strange at times. The basic synopsis for it is the twisted tale of Caleb and his alter ego Lester. After being pushed around way too much, Caleb transforms himself into Lester, and returns to those who have wronged him, and he kills them. This movie has like a very, I don't know, kind of a psychedelic element to it. I love the artwork. The artwork is super cool, if you can see it. But very, very cool movie. I never seen this before. It's got some great kills, and the story is good. The acting is pretty good, pretty solid, pretty fun. and I got this for about $14, and so super psyched. I just, you know, came across it on a total whim. Um, Mikel Angel, who was one of the directors, made a bunch of other movies in the 70s. The Love Butcher, of course, 75. The Black Six in 74. Inside Amy in 75. The Candy Tangerine Man in 75. Psychic Killer in 75. Grotesque in 88. So, you know, these guys were responsible for apparently a bunch of exploitation movies in the 70s. And again, I've said many, many, many times, the 70s is, by far my favorite decade ever in film. Not only for exploitation movies, but I feel like for more, higher art, higher production Hollywood movies. You had a lot of great studio Hollywood movies that came out in the 70s that I think that are masterpieces. Case in point, movies like The Exorcist or the Godfather movies. And but as far as the exploitation world, for me too, it's the same thing. I mean, there's so many great decades, the 80s and 60s and even 50s. 60s is a really great decade. And the last year or two, I've been getting more into the older films from those decades, and I've been discovering a shit ton of movies. So that's been really awesome. But, we're all kind of creatures of habit, and we all kind of gravitate towards, the things that we love or the things that make us the happiest or the most comfortable. And I, always go back to the 70s. It was a magical time in filmmaking. And, again, I feel like filmmaking is the highest, and I've always thought this, but I feel like filmmaking is the highest art, the highest form of art for me. And I think it's also the hardest art form that there is. Last night I was listening to a really cool podcast from um, Dave DeCentio, who is, not only one of the greatest, I think, one of the best drummers on the planet, but he's also one of the greatest educators on the planet. And he is just an amazing uh, person, teacher, player. He's a very inspiring person. And I was fortunate enough to study with him a long time ago, and he was amazing. And I just recently saw him. He came to me and he talked gave a big drum clinic, and it was just ridiculous and amazing and totally inspiring. Um, and he's one of those guys. When I listen to him being interviewed, he always says something. He's a very like kind of no bullshit guy, and he's like not like overly intellectual when he talks about things. He kind of talks about things like if you were having a beer with him, which I really like. Breaks things down in like layman's terms all the time. But he always drops some like heavy shit when he's talking. He's always like dropping some like heavy, things that you kind of need to think about and process. And it's really interesting. He has these really interesting perspectives on the music, business and being a musician. Just incredible. But he was talking about how he felt he was making the comparison to, the work that's required to become a great musician compared to, say, like using the analogy of like, or if you're a mailman or you're a plumber or whatnot. And he was saying, with no offense to those other, endeavors or other jobs, he felt musicians, that is the most challenging, because mentally and the physicality that is required, and the amount of all the levels of information that you strive to acquire is endless. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. But I in my heart of hearts, I honestly believe, um, and I do believe it's even more at a higher level in some ways, and more involved and more challenging. I think again, attributing talking about the arts, but I feel if a person is a director, a film director, I feel like, to me, that is the highest form of artistic expression but I also feel it is the most daunting and challenging thing that someone can take on, directing a film. Um, and I have felt this way for a very long time. I really started to think this way because I myself, I have some experience working in films and working on my own projects. I did a short film years ago, and I you know had experience also like doing video production stuff and a couple other things. But when I did the movie, and up until that point, I always loved movies and always had a respect for filmmaking. But it wasn't until I actually tried making a movie on my own, and it was a great experience, and I learned so much, and it made me appreciate films even more. But it was also so fucking hard. It was almost next to impossible to finish this project. And it was only a 20-minute project, and it was so hard. And now, and I thought I was going to continue on as a filmmaker, but I kind of had this weird thing, and really a very cool thing that I was fortunate enough where I started my band Quantum, and that became a thing of where, because movies are such an influence on me and inspiration, I took all of that kind of passion and love and put it into my band Quantum, and that now satisfies that part of my brain. So I no longer feel like I don't have a desire to like become a filmmaker. I kind of use the passion and the love that I have in this different direction, and Quantum satisfies that. But I came away from that situation realizing like this is the hardest shit to do. Like it's insane. It's insane because you're worrying about so many things. You're multitasking. You're wearing like 1,000 hats every day you're on set. It's insane. And so, that's the thing that I love about these movies is that what I find with these exploitation movies, it's all about the passion. It's all about creating that pure escapism. And again, without knocking high end or high art films, I feel like exploitation movies, in a real simple way of looking at it, almost a narrow way of looking at it, I feel like these movies are at the heart of why I love movies and what I want a movie experience to be like. Just pure unadulterated escapism and immersing yourself in this alternate universe for a couple hours and just escaping the mundane. And I feel at the end of the day, the world of exploitation does that better than any other form of filmmaking. That's just how I naturally feel. But this movie is awesome. It came out in 75. It's hard to believe. This came out the year I was made. The other thing that I am always astounded by when I watch these films and movies like this that I discover for the first time is how, these movies tackled some pretty crazy taboos and how crazy they were and how just like bizarre and just how hilarious they were. And the fact that at one point these movies were shown across the country in movie theaters and people would go see them. A large group of people would see these movies, and it's amazing to own this totally weird, obscure movie. Um, it's so awesome. And this film was put out by Code Red, which was a company. Speaking of distributors and the state of physical media, but this movie was put out by Code Red, and they closed. I believe they went out of business a few years ago. So very hard to find any Code Red movies. But awesome movie, The Love Butcher. Check this movie out. You will not be disappointed. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.